In this session, I'd like to talk about the three-stage process, a process framework to help with your mentoring practice. So why have a process? Well, it's a bit like a map. A map helps you to plan your route. It helps you to find out where you are if you get lost. It helps you to plan another route if you need to. It helps you to know where you are and where you're going. But also having a process framework to work from helps you to reflect on your practice as a mentor. So you could think back and think, how well did I do stage one? Or how well did I do stage two? Or what could I have done better in stage three? And so on. So it helps you to develop your practice as a mentor. So the process that I'm going to talk about now is called the three-stage process. And strangely enough, it has three stages to it. So the first stage is exploration. The second stage is enabling new understanding. And the third stage is called action planning. Now, one of the things that people who look at this for the first time get attracted by is stage three. They think, yes, let's get to the action. But the quality of a mentoring process is in the quality of stages 1 and 2. And the action in stage 3 should come as a result of good exploration, good development of understanding. So it's not a question of zipping straight to stage 3 as fast as you possibly can, which is often what managers may wish to do. So let's go through the parts of the process in detail. So stage 1 is the exploration stage. And what we can do is think of it in terms of overall strategies for that part of the process and perhaps some of the methods or the skills that you may employ to help you facilitate that strategy. So one of the things you will need to do right first on from your very first meeting is to get to know your mentee, have a bit of a social conversation with them. But one of the other things you will need to do is to establish your ground rules. And we'll do a session on ground rules at another time. What you do in terms of your strategy as a mentor is you take the lead by listening. A curious thing to say, but basically you would need to start by saying, okay, once we've established our ground rules, what is it you would like to talk about? And you give your mentee the opportunity to express themselves and talk about what it is they are wanting. Another strategy is to try and pay attention to the relationship and try to develop it over time. You may also want to clarify the aims and objectives of the mentoring itself, not only for that particular session, but over a period of time. So mentoring is often about the longer term. So think about it over time. Where would that person like to be at the end of this session, at the end of 3 months, at the end of 6 months, at the end of the year, that kind of thing. And the other strategy is you're wanting to provide support to that person to help them explore, because they're not going to explore anything if you haven't provided a supportive environment. And the skills and the methods you may use are a lot of listening. You listen very carefully to what they say. And any questions that you ask, try to make them open questions. And you will help to create the agenda with your mentee by listening carefully to what they say and then passing it back to them in the form of a summary. What I've heard you saying is this, is that about right? And if they say that's not what I meant, then you have an opportunity to go back and explore some more. You may also, of course, invite your mentee to summarize. I sometimes find this a very useful thing to do, particularly if they've had a very long talk about what it is they want to talk about. It's often a good idea to say, okay, so in a nutshell, how would you describe what it is you have just said? Summary is pretty crucial in this process framework because what summary does is act as a kind of boundary between the first stage, the second stage, and the third stage. So use your summary as a kind of checking mechanism to help to know whether you move forward or whether you move backwards. So it's important that in stage one you're patient. Sometimes the entire meeting can be about exploration. Action is something which may come later. So you create rapport with your mentee, ask them questions about themselves, develop commitment, be patient, give them time to arrive at their own answers. Don't pour in with your advice or telling them what to do or making suggestions. It's very tempting to do that if you're not used to this mentoring business. And there are some possible questions that you might ask, but generally these are kind of open type questions which help to progress the conversation. And how long does it take? Well, if the topic is significant, deep, and important, it could take several times, several sessions before you move off the exploration phase. Sometimes if it's a practical topic to do with skills or knowledge, it could take not long at all, just a few minutes or 2 or 3 sessions, or maybe it can all be dealt with in one session. But if you feel if you are in an endless rut of exploration, it's time to review and talk about the relationship. So when things seem to be about ready, we move into stage 2. And stage 2 is the understanding stage. And again, strategies and methods. So the strategy is, again, you're providing support. There are overlaps here. Support and help with that understanding. You're trying to be constructive and positive with your mentee. You're trying to recognize their key strengths, use their strengths. Don't sit and dwell on the things that they aren't doing so well. Also, once understanding has been established, try to help them think about what their options might be, what they might do about it, how they might progress it. Help them to establish priorities around those things. Perhaps you will help them to identify further development needs, which may be dealt with as part of your mentoring process, but they may also be dealt with perhaps by somebody else. So you might refer them on to somebody else. And stage 2 is about inspiring and motivating your mentee. And the skills you use, well, listen to them, but challenge them as well. Push them a little bit. Ask open questions still, but also in the stage 2, you're beginning to ask more closed questions, because closed questions give precision. How often, how many, that kind of thing. Use summary again in the same way to gain clarification. And in stage 2, in the understanding stage, you might give some information, you might give some advice, but so some advice from me is try to treat the advice as data to be discussed rather than I tell you what you want to do. And possibly share your own stories with them, share your experience. Say, well, I was in a similar situation. Would it be helpful if I shared that? And then you can interrogate that experience that you've just shared with your mentee rather than tell them what to do. Stage 2 is the turning point, actually, and sometimes new energy can be released in stage 2. And so offer encouragement and support. But remember, as a mentor, don't get carried away. Don't rush. Be patient. Let them take their time. Be flexible and resourceful, ready to move forward or sometimes backwards to exploration, because you might have to do that. Sometimes new understanding can be uncomfortable. So your mentee might go, oh, really? I never understood that in that way before. And they may be resistant. They may make slow progress, or it might be erratic in their thinking. Be ready to return to stage 1 if need be, and be sensitive to them, support them and challenge them positively. And also the new learning can sometimes make your mentee feel vulnerable. So help them to consolidate their experiences, their learning, share stories and experience, be confirming of their experience and support them, encourage them, be positive, reflect back what they've done and the good things about their work or their activities. And there are a range of possible questions that you could ask. And stage 2 can also be slowly, it can also be very quick, and it can sometimes be very spontaneous and just kind of fall out of the bottom of stage 1. So it could take a long time, or it may be quite short. And it depends on the experience, the nature of complexity and the issues, and the quality of the conversations that you've got going with your mentee. So be patient. I suspect you're beginning to realize now that this process framework doesn't work in a straight line. It goes backwards and forwards sometimes. So coming to the action stage, again, strategies and methods. What you're wanting to do in stage 3, the action stage, is once you've been generating options, which you would have done in stage 2, you take each one of those options in turn according to the priorities, and you explore them with your mentee. Think about the consequences. If you did that, what might happen? Who might be affected? How might they be affected? Is that a sensible thing to do? In stage 3, you also need to review the mentoring relationship, and I recommend that actually a formal review of your mentoring relationship every 3 sessions is a good plan. Because one thing that is known from research is that good mentoring relationships are relationships where mentor and mentee give and receive feedback to each other about the nature of the relationship. And this is where you might use your ground rules to help you do that. Help your mentee also, as one of your strategies in stage 3, to develop an action plan. So the methods, try to develop creativity in their thinking, help them resolve and come to decisions and solve problems, come to agreements with them about what the action plan might look like, and build in ways in which they can monitor and evaluate their own progress. So say to them things like, if you did that, how will you know it's working? So you're inviting them to think about how they will get feedback from the activities that they're trying out new. Ask them who might help them and how they might help them. So stage 3 is dependent on stages 1 and 2 completely. If you find that your mentee comes back after a few sessions wanting to talk about the thing they talked about previously, it may be a sign that stages 1 and 2 haven't been done as thoroughly as they could have been. So what's important is to keep that in mind. Get the quality of stages 1 and 2 done. Action plans are followed through if your mentee owns it, not if you've told them what to do or give them advice. So don't give them advice and don't give them direction. If you're going to, do it very sparingly. Get clear agreements. Maybe set some targets with them if you like. Look after your relationship and discuss it, as I've mentioned before. Feedback is important. And don't expect every single meeting to end in an action plan. That just may not be possible. But remember to celebrate progress and celebrate success. And again, there are a series of questions which are relevant to stage 3. And again, the timescale can be variable. Mentoring, remember, is very rarely about quick fixes. You're in it for a longer period of time. That's important to remember.